Hi there, this is Allen Steadham, Christian fiction author, and this is a new short series that I'm calling the Due East Review. Due East was a webcomic that my wife Angel and I co-wrote, and I did the art for between 2007 and 2009. It's an award-winning webcomic. It won Best Spiritual Comic for 2008 on the Duck Webcomics and was nominated for Most Profound Comic in 2008. And it is a Christian fiction webcomic, slice of life, about a multiracial family trying to come back together after the parents divorced. So just go ahead and get right into it and tell you about the main characters. The ex-husband and father, his name is Douglas Hu, and he is Chinese Caucasian American. So yeah, he's a mix, biracial, and he was married to Crystal Mills, who's African American, and they had 2 daughters. And then before we even start the comic, this is all backstory. They divorced because Douglas' job, an opportunity opened up for him at one of their Canadian branches, and so he took that opportunity, and his wife, Crystal, did not want to go. She had a job and she wanted to stay in Austin, Texas, where they were based. And so this caused conflict and eventually led to separation and divorce. Now, I say they have 2 daughters. There's Sapphira and Brielle. Sapphira is the older, and when the story starts, she's 21. Well, 6 years earlier, she left with her father to go to Canada. And the younger sister, Brielle, stayed with her mother in Texas. So what happened is that the parents had to stay in touch because of their kids. And so as time went on over these 6 years, the tensions ceased between the 2 of them, and they fell back in love. Doug and Crystal fell back in love. And so when we start off the story now, Doug has transferred to come back to Texas from Canada. Sapphira has chosen to come with him, but kind of unwillingly. Now, when we actually start the webcomic, there's a little bit of a mystery because on the first page, you see these bits and pieces of handwritten notes spread across the art. And they're basically a correspondence between Doug and Crystal. They're all excited about Doug moving back with Sapphira. But the mystery is these are torn letters, and we don't know why. And so it kind of shows that not everything is well in paradise. And then we also, at the same time, have the art on the first page showing Sapphira is kind of caring for her father who's fallen asleep, and she's taking his glasses off his face. But at the same time, when she goes to sit down, she's not a happy camper. She doesn't really want to leave. We find out more about that as the series goes on. So, some interesting things. This video is going to be a book 1. Book 1 consisted of 38 pages, but my wife and I had not really decided on the format for the webcomic. We didn't know if it was going to be a comic strip or a comic book. Now, I was used to comic books, but, we were doing something completely new. And so it was kind of fun, kind of exciting, but also kind of frustrating because you'll see in the art samples that I show you from the pages that, like the first couple of pages were big, full page like a comic book. But as we went a little further along, it got into kind of this hybrid form that we decided on for a while. And so another thing you'll notice is that I was still doing handwritten lettering for this. And so that was consistent throughout books 1 and 2, changed later on. It's also just in pencil because at the time that was my preferred medium. That also evolved in the series artistically. It was a very interesting place to start, and most of the art for book 1 was done in 2003. A little aside, I started off trying to put it on a comic web host at that time called Comic Genesis, where it got absolutely no traction. So it took until 2007 to find the Duck Webcomics, which at the time was called Drunk Duck, and it was hilarious and a fun little community. And that's where we got our first audience for the webcomic. So by the time we got to book 2, my wife and I had decided on just keeping it in comic book format, and it stayed that way throughout. But as this is going to focus on book 1, you will see a variety in the styles of how we did the webcomic. Just to tell you a little bit more, once Doug and Saphira arrive, we get to meet Crystal. And because up until this point, in the first couple of strips, we just focused on Doug and Saphira. And so we get to Texas, and then we get to meet Brielle and the remaining main character, who is called Carolyn May. Carolyn May is Brielle's best friend. She is also mixed race. She is Hispanic and Caucasian. And she is also, at this point in the story, the only Christian character. And Carolyn has a very special role in the comic, which we see as it goes on. But the first thing we see is essentially the first meeting after this 6-year absence, what have. And that was pretty interesting to do because it really shows you the differences in the personalities. And so, we can clearly see that Doug and Crystal are already in love with each other again. And we clearly see that the sisters do not get along or relate like they used to. And also, we see very quickly that Brielle has a lot of resentment against her father, who she will not even call her father. She calls him Mr. Who. Now, shortly after that, we also see that because of this estrangement between the sisters, that leaves Saphira kind of off on her own because her father has to go ahead and go to work, so she's staying with him at a hotel until they figure out what arrangements the family's going to be making going forward. And so she's got a lot of time to herself where she's bored out of her mind, basically. So at the same time, we also see that Brielle, continuing on a theme here, does not trust her father's intentions towards her mother. And so there's tension there. So a lot of things build up. Doug and Crystal are kind of oblivious to their kids, in a sense, in this portion of the story, because they're so in love, and they're in love with the idea of being in love again, and they're just excited that they're back together. And so they go ahead and they plan a weekend trip to San Antonio, even though they've clearly seen over a period of months that their kids really are not okay with everything that's going on. But hey, love, and you gotta go with those feelings. So that's what they do, kind of oblivious. In the meantime, Saphira's been looking for a job, but she's also been spending a lot of time to herself. She's been bored, lonely, inactive, and stress eating. So Saphira gains a lot of weight during these first few months that they're back. And Crystal says that she's going to go out of town for the weekend. Crystal suggests Brielle go to Carolyn's for the weekend so that she's not by herself. But that doesn't end up working out because of a family situation with Carolyn's brother, which we find out a little bit about. So Brielle has to be at home. Saphira's looking for work. So right about this time, we have a major event in the story happens. About 20 pages in. This is the storm. The storm changes everything. So basically a big thunderstorm starts building, and at the same time, Saphira gets a job offer. So she's really happy, and since she doesn't have anybody to share the news with, she decides she's going to go ahead and go over to her sister's house. Now at the same time, the storm is building up. It's a bad storm, actually. And so this one, a bolt of lightning strikes a tree in the yard next to Crystal's house, and it breaks off a part of the tree, which is blown by the winds into Brielle's room. It hits Brielle, knocks her to the floor, and pins her to the floor. At the same time, the other end of the tree that's in the house is on fire because it got struck by lightning. So, of course, Brielle's freaking out. She tries to get out from under it, but she's just pinned and she can't get out. So, she's terrified. She sees that she could die from this. So she cries out, she screams. She, says, anybody who can help me, please help me. Well, there's nobody there to come and get in there, and they couldn't even if they wanted to because the door is locked. But the rain just starts coming down and extinguishes the fire. So that actually, makes her happy. She's not going to die. She's just pinned under a tree. Well, at the same time, Saphira arrives, she has a key to the house. She lets herself in, she gets the tree off of Brielle, and calls for an ambulance. So one of the things that's really, really important about this is that it shows God in action without us seeing a personification of God. We see the actions of God through the storm, through the rain, and through Saphira's coincidental arriving. Now, I'm not going to tell everything about book 1, but we will see in here a dream sequence that Brielle has while unconscious in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And this is actually a very pivotal dream for her because it raises a lot of questions for her about herself, about life, about death, and about spirituality. So again, remember, this is a Christian webcomic, but it's a slice of life story, and we were aiming at a secular audience. And so this was new for us, and we actually got very good response, in the comments from readers and everything. I highly encourage you to go and read book 1. There are 4 books in the series, but the others are shorter. I will do videos on the other 3 books. I will also do a wrap-up video that talks about where Due East would have gone and why it didn't. And so let me know if you have any questions about this. Of course, if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel. That way you can ring the little bell on there, click the little bell so you get the notifications so you can hear about when the other videos come out on this. So anyway, I appreciate your time and thank you for joining me for the Due East review of book 1. See you next time.